Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Now that we're done with super pre-releases, it's time to optimize our starter decks for deck limited battles. I've actually already participated in a deck limited tournament with 8 people at my local game store, and I was able to win using this very list. Just to get this out of the way, we still don't have a large card pool to work with, and the good cards in these starters are 2 of, so it shouldn't be surprising that there are so many max counts here. I'll briefly go through the obvious cards, but I do want to get into a more in-depth discussion and share my thought process on cards I included versus the ones I did not include, and as the thumbnail suggests, I will make my case for why you should be playing the I Smell Adventure Ahead event card. Starting off, we have the Luffy Leader card with Activate Main once per turn. Give this leader or one of your characters up to 1 Rested Dawn card. It's a pretty good effect, and he's the only red leader we currently have, so moving on. Nami is a 1 cost, 1000 power, counter 1000, with essentially the same effect as our leader, where once per turn, she can give a Rested Dawn to our leader or one of our character cards. Chopper is a 1 cost, 1000 power with the blocker effect. Low cost blockers are essential in this format right now, and he's the only blocker in the red starter deck, so of course we're going to max him out at 4. Sanji is a 2 cost, 4000 power with the rush effect, meaning he can attack the turn he comes into play, but only if he has 2 Dawn attached. If you don't choose to attach active Dawn to gain rush, you can use the leader and Nami's effect to pull this off, or our next card, Brook, who is a 2 cost, 3000 power, counter 2000, who on play lets you attach 2 Rested Dawn to your leader or one of your character cards. Sanji is a must play at 4 because you want to get off to an explosive start, but he's also good late to close out games. Red lacks good defense, so Brook is also necessary at 4 for the 2000 counter. I try not to play Brook if possible, but sometimes he is worth it for the effect and having another attacker on board. Zoro is a 3 cost, 5000 power card with the effect Dawn times 1. This character gains plus 1000 power. Now this is the first card that can be debated at 4 of. I chose to max him because I like to hit 7000 power because it forces your opponent to play a 2k and a 1k counter, or if they choose to play a plus 4000 counter event card, then they aren't maximizing that counter because it's used to block for less than it potentially could. 7000 is just a good sweet spot, and I prefer maxing Zoro over using any copies of Jinbei for this reason. I'll discuss Jinbei later, but moving on, we have 2 vanilla cards, Nico Robin and Frankie. Nico Robin is a 3 cost, 5000 power with counter 1000, and Frankie is a 4 cost, 6000 power with counter 1000. They're both solid attackers, but to be honest, I mostly have them in for their counter 1000. I have so many good attackers in this deck already, so these cards are good to provide some extra defense. The reason for the even split is because Nico Robin costs 1 less Dawn, and sometimes that extra Dawn is more valuable than the extra 1000 power that Frankie provides. On the other hand, there are occasions where it's better to play Frankie because he can't be removed from play by characters that pop 3 cost or less character cards. So there's situations where one is better than the other, and that's why I split them at 3 apiece. The 5 cost Luffy SR has 6000 power and the rush effect. His secondary effect is Dawn times 2. When this character attacks, your opponent cannot activate blocker. It's pretty obvious to include 4 copies of this card, I believe. It's the best late game attacker to have in the deck. The 6 cost Luffy promo is no slouch either though, with 7000 power, and with Dawn times 2 he gains rush. I've seen some people not maxing this out, and I'm not really sure why. I usually get close to ending games before I even reach 10 Dawn, so having 4 copies of this card increases your chances of seeing it from your deck. There's no search or draw cards in this deck, so the best thing you can do is to increase your odds of drawing into these cards. Now we're getting into the event cards. Diablo Janbei is very strong as a 1 cost because you choose one of your Straw Hats and your opponent cannot activate blocker if that Straw Hat leader or character attacks during this turn. It also has a trigger to KO one of your opponent's blockers with 3 costs or less, so Chopper, Beige, Black Maria, and Trafalgar Law can all be KO'd off this trigger without spending any Dawn. Having 4 copies increases the odds of this trigger paying off for you, and it's a strong card to close out games, so having 4 I think is very necessary. Guard Point is another essential 4 copies in this deck because for only 1 cost you counter plus 3000. It's one of the best defenses that you have against attacks, so no further explanation needed there. Alright, so we finally reached the I Smell Adventure Ahead event card. So I only played 2 copies and I think that's enough. I only expect to play this card once a game, and it's such a potential game changer. I've had to defend this card against several doubters. I'll start off by saying that this card straight up won me the final match of the tournament because I was able to refresh my hand for 4 new cards, and I got 2 rushes off of it to close out the game. I think in order to maximize this card, you have to either play it when you have absolutely nothing going for you, or you hold on to it throughout the game until the final turn. You could simply play what you need from your hand and reshuffle the ones you don't, but the way I like to play it is to get a lead in life advantage since I'm the aggro deck, and the turn before I plan to go for game, I take a lot of attacks to my life to increase my hand size and play the event for a final explosive turn. Now, I'm not saying that this is always going to work out, but I think it's a good 1 or 2 of because I believe that any card that can completely change your situation is worth playing at least 1 copy of. It also has a trigger to activate the card's main effect, so maybe your opponent triggers it when you're in a negative game script and you refresh your hand for counters and blockers you need during your defensive phase as well. Gum Gum Jet Pistol is probably the absolute best card in this deck. You need to be playing 4 of this card because for 4 costs it KOs a character with 6,000 power or less. It's one of the best character removals in the game without question. Finally, we have a card that I truly believe is debatable. It's the card I'd be most likely to swap out, and that's the Thousand Sunny stage card. For 2 costs you play it and it has Activate Main. You rest this stage card to give one of your Straw Hat type leader or character cards plus 1,000 power. I love to see this card early on to put on that extra pressure, but I usually don't want to spend the cost later on and it can become a dead card in hand. I only play 2 of those, so I do think it's a worthy inclusion in the final list, but I'm open to swapping out this card completely. So I do want to go over some cards to consider. If you prefer Jinbei over Zoro as your 3-cost attacker without counter, his effect is Dawn times 1. When attacking, give one of your leader or character cards plus 1,000 power. I don't include this card because I have enough attackers and I prefer that 7,000 onto Zoro rather than spreading out my power. Jinbei does combo well with the other 2 cards to consider, Usopp and Vivi. I cut Usopp because I just think he's too much investment to pull off, and I have enough ways to get around blockers in this deck already with Diablo Jambe, 5-cost Luffy, and Gum Gum Jet Pistol. I do think he's more bearable in combination with Jinbei and the Thousand Sunny to boost his attack to where it's usable, but I still think that it's just too many resources. Vivi is actually the card that I'd strongly consider swapping 2 of in place of the Thousand Sunny. She's a 2-cost with a respectable 4,000 power and counter 1,000. The extra counter would always come in handy, and her cost is so low that I can save my Dawn to use elsewhere. Jinbei would bump her up to the 5k she needs to attack on the opposing leader, but she has good standalone value in my opinion. I can just attach Dawn through other means. So I want to end this video with a few tips for playing red. I would recommend being aggressive in attacking your opponent's leader card. This isn't a control deck, so worry more about winning fast than clearing board. I'd also recommend blocking every attack on your leader that you can early because this deck doesn't do a good job of blocking big attacks late. And lastly, always attack with your character cards first if you intend to attack with them at all, because your leader could trigger effects that could KO your character cards and you'll never get the opportunity to swing with them. So that's about all I have to say for red. I do think this is an overlooked deck for deck limited battles, and I'd love to hear your opinions in the comment section below. Consider subscribing, and I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like if you enjoyed what I had to say. So yeah, thanks for watching, and take care until next time.